Welcome to Smashed Avo Property. Today I'm speaking with a fellow YouTuber Queenie Tan. She's a 24-year-old who purchased her first property at 23. Although she also invests in other asset classes and has already amassed a significant net wealth at a young age.
When I was 19, I was studying law full-time at uni and also a communications degree. And it was just so hard. It was so hard working 2 jobs, uni, and I just ended up dropping out of university.
As always, seek your own professional financial, legal, taxation and property investing advice for your current situation. Everything we talk about is just our opinion and general in nature and should never be considered as personal advice. So without any further ado, let's get house hunting with Queenie. Queenie Tan, welcome to Smashed Avo Property.
It's so great to be in the podcast. Thank you so much for inviting me on.
It's an absolute pleasure. I've been lucky enough to watch your YouTube journey and see you grow and your channel grow and your followers and everything like that. So I'm super keen to talk to you. I think we originally reached out a little while ago and I wasn't sure, we're going to do a collab and all that sort of stuff. And I was like, I don't know. And then to see you grow the way you have and then to start the podcast, it's kind of that does work. Let's jump on. And then I was watching a video the other day of you buying your first house at 23. And I thought, what a perfect opportunity to have a chat. And so I guess that's what really drove this podcast interaction, and also having a female guest on, I'm super excited about. It's not something that I commonly get to do. I've had 3 or something before, but it is a very male-dominated podcast, so I love the female representations. But first and foremost, why don't you give us a little bit of background about yourself, who you are, what your YouTube channel is about, and how old you are now, and what really drove you to make that first sort of investment decision?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's so good. Like you said, in this space, it's so great to meet like-minded young people that are also looking to, share tips on their finance journey like you are on your podcast. So I'm really happy to be meeting you and be on your podcast because I think, like you said, our values align and where we want to go align. So it does really work perfectly. So I guess a bit of a background from my end. I started my YouTube channel during COVID, and the reason why I started it was I saw a lot of people, being stood down, losing their jobs, really struggling, and it honestly really upset me, seeing so many people go through financial hardship. And the reason why it upset me was because I have been through that before. When I first moved out of home, I was only 19 and I was living on $400 a week. And I remember those days so clearly because it was so hard to make ends meet and I was working so much. I was also doing part-time internship, part-time telemarketing role, full-time uni. I was just had no free time and I was only earning $400 a week and I had so much financial stress. And I know that if COVID happened when I was 19 and I just moved out of home, I don't know how I would have coped. So I just felt grateful that I was in a position now that I've set myself up financially. Thankfully, COVID happened when I am set up financially. So I guess I wanted to make videos to give people out there, like how I was, hope and, that you are on the right path. And if you do work hard and if you just keep at your journey, good things will happen. So yeah, that was the reason why I started.
That's awesome. I think that's so inspirational, and it's so true. There's so many people that don't get to go through or go through hardships in especially coming out of uni and being in uni. I was in the same position. I was at uni full time and working full time, and it's hard. It's not easy. You don't get a spare second. I was actually doing a second job on the weekend too. So it is full on, and you're earning a low income, and when you step out into the big bad world, that's essentially what it is. And some people aren't fortunate enough to have, family support or stay at the family home. They've actually got to go out and rent themselves and live off $400 a week like you have. And I think that's super inspirational just to encourage others to grab a hold of their financials. And I've heard it a lot of times. A lot of people talk about it's not about how much you earn, it's about what you spend. And I think, that's the real representation of specifically what you do. You're all about saving money and tax and everything else as well. And just financial literacy, understanding finance and everything that's happened there. So for my listeners, if you haven't checked out her channel yet, how is the best way to go and find it?
Oh, so just on YouTube, just search Invest with Queenie and you'll be able to see all my videos there. And thank you so much for shouting out my channel and for watching. Really appreciate it.
Nah, any support I can give is absolutely amazing. So back onto the property topic, give us a little bit of an indication on how old you are now and when you bought your first property, and a little bit of background around that property.
Yeah, sure. So I first bought my place when I was 23. Now I've just turned 24, so it was a year ago. The journey was just it was actually quite challenging, you know, like there are so many things that I didn't know as a first home buyer, and it was such a journey. Like I'm sure you're aware, like when you're looking for when you're looking for places to buy, there are so many things that can be wrong with a place. You know, it's not just about finding a good price or a property, like it's just everything. It's the neighbors, it's the location, it's the price, of course. Like there are so many things that you need to consider. So yeah, I think it's awesome that you have this podcast. And property, from what I've researched, I did a video recently on which one's a better investment, property versus stocks. I think I was kind of on the fence about it initially. After doing the research and the numbers, I think it makes sense for me now to look more into property investing because you have that leveraged element. So let's say you have like $100,000 to invest. If you invest $100,000 in stocks, you get $100,000 in stocks. But if you invest $100,000 in a property, you get $500,000 worth of property, which I think is really cool. So that's why the compounding effect when it comes to property and that leverage effect is really cool and something I didn't really consider. Of course, you can still make really good returns with stocks, but yeah, property is a really good one to look at.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think this podcast obviously has a bigger bias towards the property side, but I love talking to people about stocks as well. I got into stocks when I was younger, but I got bitten a little bit, not too hard. I think I lost like $2,000 or something like that, but I never like delved back in. So I've always stuck to property now. But was stocks like your original game plan? Like, is that what you originally stuck to? And now you're kind of diversifying into multiple assets?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started investing in stocks when I was about 19, 20, just like a little bit. I invested my first $5,000 in a diversified fund. And then from there, I just love seeing my money grow and like multiply. The plan was never really to invest in property. The plan was always to just keep investing in stocks and just buy a first home. But after doing the numbers, getting more into personal finance investing, I've realized that, yeah, property is actually such a good area. I used to think that, I guess, property in Australia, like, is it already over? You know, like, have we already seen that boom? And here we are, like, the generation after, you know, the millennials, the baby boomers, like, is it too late for us to invest? And what I've realized from my own properties growth and seeing the numbers over the past 30 years, I don't think that's true. Yeah, I think it still has a lot of growth potential.
I love that you brought that up because it's a very controversial topic at the moment. There's a lot of people out there, a lot of economists and all of that predicting house falls and saying, you know, the property market's going to crash. Look at Ireland, look at America, you know, all of these previous examples. Then we've got Scott Morrison coming out yesterday, sort of reinforcing that, you know, our economies aren't the same and we should, you know, we're not the same as those countries and it's not a bubble-driven economy. And there's so much media coverage out there and it's so hard to take it all in and really accept it what it is for face value. Everyone has to do the numbers for themselves, and it is a time where people are questioning that sort of stuff. Is, you know, exactly as you said, has the cycle finished? Is this, is that? And it's hard to foresee, but you know, you really have to run your numbers on your own and make your own decision. And that's what I really like. I don't want to be super bullish on the property market, even though I probably have been in some of my videos beforehand or podcasts beforehand. And I don't want to be bearish either. So I think my biggest take back on that is just if you are reading a news headline or if you are, you know, watching something on YouTube that is negative, don't take it for face value. Actually delve into the numbers and figure it out for yourself, because there are a lot of things that are different. And you know, as we're seeing now, the banks are extending mortgage holidays for another 4 months. The Treasurer, Josh Frydenberg, just said that they're going to reassess the JobKeeper and JobSeeker package on the 23rd of July, which will be coming out. And they said they're probably going to extend it. Or they haven't said that, but, you know, that's probably what they've indicated or alluded to. So, you know, when people are talking about this September cliff, it's not just going to be end of September and we're all heading down economically. You know, it's going to be this prolonged, stagnated period out. And it is going to affect our economy over the next 2 or 3 years, undoubtedly, like it is going to happen. But, you know, a 15 to 20% reduction in property prices over 2 years can bounce back just as quickly over the next 4 months. Like property prices can bounce back significantly. And that's why I always say on this podcast, you know, property investing is a 30-year plan minimum. It's a hold, a sit and hold. Obviously, if you go through financial circumstances that make you have to sell the property, that's completely fine. But the game plan is to hold on to an asset for that long and rent it out. But yeah, but anyway, back onto you, onto more of you. So the shares and the property and the finance, is that something that was talked about in the household when you were younger? Like, did you grow up with those sorts of values, or is it something that you sort of taught yourself?
Yeah, really interesting question. So my dad, he is super frugal, like really good with money, like, but almost like too much. Like I remember like he always had money like saved and invested. He actually was like a single dad. So he left his job when he was 45 to take care of me. So I remember like he didn't have much money like coming in, obviously because he didn't have a job. So, but he still had so much saved. And like invested, so he was able to kind of like, we were able to get by on the interest of his investments. So that was really cool, like seeing that was possible. But again, he was super extreme. Like I remember being a kid, like he drove this like really beat up car, and I really hated like him driving me to school. And I remember like being in the car and like just like would tell him to like drop me off like a couple of blocks away and like walk myself to school. And like I remember being at like like after school, if I was at dancing or something like that, I could literally hear my dad like pulling up, or like if he was like a couple of streets away, like that's how loud his car was. Wow. I was so embarrassed at the time. But you know what, like now looking back, I think that he is really smart. Like he's not like most people, like he didn't really care what people thought. Like he would drive a beat up car, it didn't matter to him. He would wear old clothes, it didn't really matter to him. And at the time I was thinking like, what is wrong with you? Like, why are you like this? But now looking back, I'm like, actually, you know what? There's a lot to be said for, I guess, living within your means, being humble and that sort of thing. So I guess why I have taken this journey was I never really wanted to ask my dad for money. Like even when I was a kid, I saw how hard it was for him to part with money and how much it meant to him. And that's why I wanted to get a job as soon as I could. So when I was 14, I got myself a job. I tried to be as independent as possible because I didn't want to be a burden. I didn't want to ask him for money. And so I guess I developed those financial habits pretty early. I didn't want to rely on anyone else but myself to take me through. And I think it's served me pretty well so far, like having that attitude towards money.
That's awesome. It's such a good base and foundation to have. And what I love about your story is you can look back on it now and say, okay, that is too extreme. Like you have implemented some of the fundamentals that he's distilled in you, but you can correlate the difference between what's too far and what's not too far. You know what I mean? So, yeah. And I think a lot of people have that sort of background. They either come from a lower financed family early on and learn those fundamentals and don't want to, be in that position in their family moving forward. And they kind of grow and develop and learn those skills of being quite frugal, but then taking that into their investing and their life journey as well. So that's awesome. I love that. It's a great takeaway. And how are you and your dad now? Like do you talk about finances still and all that sort of stuff, or is it just not talked about at all in the household?
Yeah, we still talk about it a lot. Like I guess now because I'm making my own money, doing my own investments, he sometimes like comes to me for advice, like, oh, what should I do? Like, should I do this or whatever? And we talk about it. So yeah, it's a really good relationship. And I'm happy that we're now on the same page. I think it's so funny, like growing up, it's such a strange experience, like when you're a little kid, you just have no idea what the world is like, and I guess you just learn it as you grow older. What about you? Like, what was your story like, and what was your family like growing up with money?
Yeah, my dad was Dutch. My parents got divorced when I was 10, so I kind of I had a split split family growing up. Mum was really free with money. Like she would spend, like she was fine. She didn't really, like she understands the value of money, but she never, you know, had the safety buffers or put money away or anything like that. And Dad was completely opposite. Like he was Dutch. He was always saving, always doing certain things. Like, you know, we'd go out for dinner and instead of paying for our dinner together, we would have to split the bill when I was like, you know, 16 or whatever. And it was kind of like, well, you know, I was like, come on, Dad.
Your own meal.
Yeah, I was like, come on, Dad, can't you just pay for my dinner? Like, can't you just eat that? But
It's so funny.
Little do I realize the values that it distilled in me, you know what I mean? Like from a young age, I understood the values of going out for dinner. Like that was a luxury rather than a necessity. And so there's just little things like that I picked up on that I think have really helped me. I think property wise, my dad was a real estate agent. So he's always just, pounded into me about property. I think the biggest thing about his generation though is they've had 30 years of really strong economic growth and really strong property growth. And so, you know, his view on property is, you know, it doubles in value every 10 years. And that's kind of what I grew up with, always thinking I need to get into property and that's how I get into investments. I now look at that and go, okay, well, I think, you know, property is still a great asset class. I don't know if it's going to value every 10 years or 7 to 10 years. They used to say, I think it's probably going to take more like 15 years or something like that now. But I still understand the whole cash flow side of things and the leveraging, as you were talking before, and all that sort of stuff. I am still very invested in the property sector now. But I take what his initial views are for a grain of salt and try and understand my own economic indicators and how they relay onto the certain market at the moment. So it's been good. It's been good to have that generational push and now we can sort of relay and see the market moving forward. I still think, you know, Sydney and Melbourne are one of the most livable cities. People want to move here. People love moving to this country. I don't think our debt levels are ridiculously crazy. Our national LVR is only like 25% or something like that. You know, and the property sector is a $7.1 trillion industry. But the crux to that is there's so many jobs that are reliant on the property sector in construction and real estate. So if it falls, it's a big one to fall. And I just, given the recent stimulus that we've seen and everything like that, I just can't see it, you know, happening overnight. You know what I mean? So I think we'll be good there. Anyway, so what was the hardest part of getting started? I mean, you said you had a job at 14. Were you constantly saving there for a while until you were, you investing in stocks, or, you know, did your income like relatively increase as you got older? I think you're saying you're earning $400 a week when you were 19, but has that relatively increased and now you've just been able to save a deposit and buy a house, or did you save that, you know, pretty consistently over the years?
Yeah, well, when I first got my job, I was like, yes, this is great. Like, I can buy whatever I want. And like, my dad's not going to say anything because it's my own money. And so I was like, yes, everything that I was earning, I was like spending. And then I started to realize, like, hang on, this isn't great, because sometimes there is emergency things that pop up and you need money for it. And if you're living like paycheck to paycheck, you can't pay for those things. So I realized, yeah, I should probably start saving money. Maybe around when I hit 16, I started to save a bit of money, not crazy amounts because I still wasn't earning very much, but I was able to save money to go on holidays and things like that. I was able to save to move out of home, even though I wasn't earning very much at all. And then even when I was 19, that was when I really started to think of ways that I could increase my income. So when I was 19, I was studying law full-time at uni, and also a communications degree. And it was just so hard. Like, it was so hard working 2 jobs, uni, and I just ended up dropping out of university because I had these marketing jobs, which I was doing full-time. And I realized that I was getting quite good at it, like researching in my spare time, like how could I be better? How could I be more valuable to this company? And then I started to get more confident with my skills. I guess like asking for raises, moving to different companies to increase my income. And after doing this for a couple of years, I've gotten now to a point where, I don't have a degree, but I'm on like a 6-figure income. I'm only 24. I'm like often the youngest person at the companies that I work for. And often like people, you know, that I guess like am managing are like older than me because I didn't go to university and I was doing everything by, like, learning things by myself. So I feel really, it was actually a good decision, me dropping out of university. So that's how I was able to earn so much money at such a young age. And yeah, I guess that was my journey. And I still tried to keep the same lifestyle. So even if I was like increasing my income, I wasn't, I was still staying in that 1-bedroom apartment that I had since I was 19. I was still like buying groceries every week and not eating out too much, and being really frugal whenever I went out or whenever I went on holidays and things like that. So yeah, I think keeping the same lifestyle and increasing your income and saving and investing, learning about personal finance, it's really the way to go. And if I were to tell myself back then when I was 19 and just say, like, don't worry, like, in just 4 years' time, you'll have enough money to buy a home, I really don't think I would have believed myself. But it's really the power of having that goal, even if you think it's impossible at the time, like, you really can do it if you put your mind to something.
Yeah, that lifestyle creep is a huge one, and the delayed gratification piece too. Like, a lot of people earn a bigger income and they want a nicer car and they go on that luxury holiday, and it just, they're still staying above, but they're spending more and more and more. And it's about capturing that surplus cash flow and as you say, saving it or reinvesting it. And eventually you do save that deposit. I think that's huge too, because a lot of people sort of, when they want to get into property and they think, I got to save a $100,000 deposit or a $50,000 deposit, like, it's ridiculous. You can't, unless you're forecasting out, you can't see it. You think, oh, well, over a year, over 10 months, I'm going to have to save $5,000 a month. I'm never going to be able to do that over a 2-year period. I'm going to have to save, $2,500 a month or whatever it may be. And it just becomes, you can't see it. You can't feel it. You can't touch it. It's too far away. You can't account for it. But as you say, it's just about doing those daily habits, those monthly habits of avoiding the lifestyle creep, saving, investing, and eventually building up that enough deposit so that in 4 years' time you can look back and go, hey, I was able to do it. And I think that's a massive one. And I love your story too with the uni, because I think that's where a lot of younger people get caught up as well. They kind of finish school and for some people, their only pathway is to go to uni, and they're not sure about what they want to do. They're not sure about what they want to study. A lot of people change degrees halfway through and they kind of just get stuck. And I love your story where, you're now 24, you're only 6 figures, you dropped out of uni, but you're killing it. Like, you're absolutely smashing it. And I think a lot of people think, if I drop out, what am I going to do? What am I going to end up doing? They're confused, they're lost. And it's all about your individual person. Like, you're obviously very driven. You're obviously, passionate about what you do. And I think that's the key, really, is just enjoy what you do every day, find a way to make a living off it. And you can earn, you can be in a position like yourself. So I think you've done phenomenally well there. Speaking of that first deposit, how big was it? Did it take you a while to save, or were you able to leverage like 95% LVR or something, or did you actually save the full 20% deposit?
Yeah, I actually saved the full 20% deposit, which it took about 4 years. So just of like regular saving. I also have a partner, so we were both contributing towards it. Honestly, looking back, I was like, with what I know now, maybe I should have just saved the 5% deposit. Who knows, maybe it would have been better. But at the time, I just wanted to, I guess, prove to ourselves that we could save a 20% deposit. It's a lot of money, but like you said, it's all about those daily, monthly habits and breaking it down. Honestly, with everything that I've seen in the media, like, people are quite, I don't know, I think a lot of young people do feel a bit pessimistic about the future. Like, will they ever be able to afford a place? And absolutely, yes. Like, I think anyone can do it. Like, I'm not the smartest person in the world. I'm not the best with money. I've made so many bad mistakes when it comes to money, and I was also very confused. So if I can do it, I really think anyone can,
Yeah, 100%. I think that's great advice. And as I say, it comes down to your individual. If you're driven and it's what you want to achieve and it's what you set out to do, there's nothing stopping you. Like, you can definitely get there. Yeah. So speaking of investing, I mean, have you got a goal for it? Like, do you have an exit strategy? Do you have an end plan? Do you want to earn a certain amount from passive income? I mean, what's the plan there?
Yeah, so my goal is to become financially independent and financially free. So my investments, basically I can live off the interest of my investments. And I want to be able to do this so that I can really work on the things that make me happy, that I'm really passionate about. I do love my job. I love marketing. I love what I'm doing. But since I started this YouTube channel, it's made me realize that I've never been so happy to work on something in my life, you know, like being able to help people, being able to meet people like you and other people that have the same mindset and mentality. It's honestly been the most fun I've ever had. So I would love to become financially free one day so I can really work on things that make me happy and then also give back more, you know, like think about how we can improve our future for the better, like what we can do as young people to make our future better, like renewable energy or something like that, you know. Being able to have that freedom to work on things that make me really happy, that's eventually the goal. So I have a goal of I want to have like $1.8 million saved and invested so then I can really live off the interest. I'm sort of almost like part of the way there. I'm like $300,000 like in net worth at the moment. Currently saving up for an investment property. Hopefully should be able to afford it sometime next year if all goes well. And then eventually, yeah, I think passive income from the YouTube channel, hopefully get monetized soon and be able to do more of the things that I love.
That's awesome. And I love that you've kind of roadmapped everything out as well. Like that's such a big play that a lot of people miss out on. Like they kind of set out with these goals and ambitions, but they don't map out how long it's going to take. And then their expectations is unprecedented. Like I love that you said, oh, we probably able to afford it in a year, you know, the 1.6 million, but people that are, you know, start to say, they're kind of like, oh, if I can't do it in a year, then I can't see it. I can't do it. And so it's so good to see that fundamental. I think that's awesome. Yeah, you've done really well there. And I think 100%, you know, you're on the right path. I can't see you not getting there, especially with the YouTube and everything else that you're doing. And what I love is that your goals are, you're already chasing your goals in some way. Like, you know, if you were living off the passive income, as you said, you'd be either giving back or still doing a YouTube channel, which what makes you happy. And you're already doing that. So I think, you know, in every light and every retrospect, you're definitely on your own trajectory that you've set for yourself. So I think that's super key. And if anyone takes anything away from this podcast, that's 100% what I would do is just set your goals, set what you want to do in your life, and find a way to achieve it. And you're obviously absolutely killing it. So speaking of your next investment, and maybe you can go back to your first investment a little bit as well, but was there anything that you kind of looked out for when you were assessing the potential of that property? Is there anything you kind of, do you run the numbers? Is there like a certain, you know, statistic that you look out for or a certain area? I mean, what's the plan there?
Interesting. And I would love your thoughts on this because you obviously know a lot more about it than I do. But basically when I was first looking, it was interesting. I created this little like spreadsheet of properties that we were looking at in the budget that we wanted. I guess areas. So what was really important to me was to be close to a train station so then I could get to work really easily. I wanted to be I wanted to be able to get into the city within 25 minutes of where I lived. And I also wanted to get a place in an area that was undervalued, you know, like maybe not the trendiest area or the coolest area just yet, because I think that, you know, you can pay a lot of money for just like living in a cool like suburb or whatever. That's something that hasn't really fazed me. I'd rather get a place that I guess still ticks all the boxes, but it is undervalued. And yeah, so that's what I really tried to look at when it came to a property. What I also tried to look at was, because I live in Sydney, $500,000 can only really get you an apartment. So looking at 2-bedroom apartments. I was also looking for older style buildings because there have been so many issues in Sydney when it comes to brand new apartment buildings, and it honestly kind of scared me at the time. So we had this big thing with the Opal Towers in Homebush, massive like construction, and the windows started popping out and literally people had to be evacuated and lost their whole investment. There are also some other cases in Mascot, which is closer to the airport. Again, like new apartment buildings, and yeah, people just lost their homes, had to be evacuated, can't even live there, it's not safe, and also pay a lot of money to the strata in order to fix up this property. So that really scared me. I was like, oh, okay, I've got 500 grand. I don't really want to invest in a new property because I just don't know if it's going to last. I don't want to be one of those unlucky people that invest in an apartment building that just crumbles. So I went for like a very older style, like apartment block. It was built in the 70s. It's got hard brick walls, close to the train station, and also quite nice on the inside. Like it, and good neighbors. Like even though it's an older style building, like they still make sure that the carpet's nice. Like you have to pay a bit more in strata fees, but it's well maintained, which was important to me. And then, yeah, because it was a bit cheaper, since it was an older apartment, I was able to renovate the kitchen. So that's fully renovated. Also going to be renovating the bathroom when we sell it. So it's nice being able to make things your own, I think. So that's what I really liked with older style like apartments. What about you?
No, I think that's really good. I think you touched on some really great fundamentals there. Being close to the train station, CBD, all that sort of stuff. I think there's a piece you're talking about there called gentrification, where essentially, you've got all these hip cafes and restaurants and all that sort of stuff, and people pay premium to be in that area. But then there's also this concept of the flow-on effect to the surrounding suburbs. So once, all those cafes and restaurants have been maxed out, they start to flow out to the surrounding suburbs, and people that want to be close to that but can't afford the really expensive properties in those suburbs start to buy in those surrounding suburbs. And that's essentially the piece that you've gone for there, is that being close to these gentrifying areas, and eventually over the years get that flow-on effect and come through there. So and I love that you touched on the sort of the newer apartments, off the plan apartments and all that sort of stuff. I think they've always been the biggest cause of the issues, you know what I mean? There always been, there's been plenty of stories of people buying an off-the-plan apartment in the peak of the market in 2017, and when they went to settle, or when the construction had finished, their properties were valued significantly less than what they had purchased it for. So, and they've lost their deposits and all that sort of stuff. So, I think you're well aware of all the stuff that's happening over there, especially with the Opal Tower and stuff. So, yeah, definitely some great fundamentals there. So it's great to see you're on the right path. And speaking of, like, I think you just said there that you're planning to sell and do a renovation before you sell, but is that part of your exit strategy? I mean, how are you planning to move forward? Are you going to sell and upgrade, or are you going to buy an investment property and then sell and upgrade? I mean, what does the strategy look like there?
Yeah, good question. So at the moment, saving to buy another property. So what I'm thinking is a duplex. So then we can like live in one part of the duplex. They'll both have like separate doors and everything, and then rent out the other side of the duplex. So that's the goal. It'll be really cool to have like a landed property, like a duplex. It's called like house hacking. I'm not sure if you've heard of that term, but it's something I want to try. And then the goal is to rent out this apartment that we're living in, do up the bathroom, make sure it's really nice. And but who knows, like I guess if the property prices are good at that point in time, like we could even sell it. But the idea is I do want to get a duplex and a landed property. That would be quite cool.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I've definitely heard the term house hacking. I think it's is it more of an American thing? I don't know. A lot of American guys bring up the house hacking part, but essentially it's like you buy a duplex, you rent out one side and then live in the other, yeah?
Yeah, pretty much. But then the idea is kind of like the rent from the other side kind of pays off the mortgage for you.
Yeah.
So you're essentially living for free. But I'm not sure how much it will pan out here. I still need to run those numbers. But yeah.
Yeah. I know a lot of guys. I don't know if you watch Graham Stephan, but essentially he does that. Yeah. Like he's got this duplex of 6 or whatever. He lives in one of them and then rents out the rest, and then they all pay for his mortgage. So yeah, that's a cool way of doing it. And I think that's what everyone's investment goals really are. Is that passive income, capital growth play where you gaining capital growth over time, you're earning that equity, and then the rents are increasing with the value of the property, and eventually, they're paying for themselves. So it's the same sort of play, just a very Americanized version of it, I think.
That's true.
So what about mistakes? I mean, it doesn't sound like you did allude to that you have made some mistakes before, but is there anything that you can share with us that the potential listeners could learn from?
Yeah, so in terms of real estate, I've made bad mistakes when it comes to investing in stocks and cryptocurrency. But real estate, because I'm just a first home buyer, don't think I've really made any mistakes there. But so many potential mistakes that I could have made. For example, there was this one place we were looking at, and it was like this like 1-bedroom apartment in like a fully like brand new building somewhere. This is when we just first started and we didn't really do any research into the Opal Towers, the problems with new apartment buildings. And I remember like seeing it because it was one of the first properties we visited. And I was like, oh, this place is so nice, like blah, blah, blah. It's close to the train station, all the cafes, whatever. This is going to be awesome. And then I remember like just some part of me was like, you should research this construction company. Just see what's up with them. See what the reviews are. Just do it. So I researched the construction company, and there are all these terrible reviews on Google, like 1-star reviews, like these property managers like never came back to me. There's like a hole in my wardrobe, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then they had this A Current Affair episode about them, and I was watching it, and this guy was like, oh my God, it was so funny. Like they've turned him into kind of like a meme. So basically this guy, he has so many massive apartment blocks all around Sydney, and they're all exactly the same. And he has this, he's like notorious for creating these brand new apartment blocks, selling them, and just having really shoddy like development. So there are all these people that have bought places and they can't even like open the balcony windows. Like they just show like, look, I can't even open my like balcony door, and they haven't fixed it. And another person was like, look, like they haven't even finished my wardrobe. And someone else was like, I bought off the plan and it was supposed to be a 2-bedroom, but it's only a 1-bedroom. And and meanwhile, this guy has like bought his like wife a brand new yellow Lamborghini and is like showing it off on Instagram. And it was like, oh my God, I'm so glad I did not buy a place there. So lots of things to look out for when you are buying properties, especially new ones. That would have been incredible. A bad mistake.
I think that's great too. Like, I think researching the construction company is super great. And it's not something a lot of people think about, you know what I mean? They're kind of just like, oh yeah, everyone else is buying. The sales agent's got this flashy brochure and it looks good. Everything sounds great. I'm getting talk the talk. But just for 5 minutes of a Google search, you can really start to see, you know, what comes out. And a lot of people miss that step. So I'm so glad you brought it up. And is there any other like financial mistakes that you want to pick on? I mean, I noticed that you said something about Bitcoin there for a bit and shares and stocks and stuff, but is there any other sort of financial mistakes that you'd like to people to be aware of, not to make themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. So cryptocurrency, I invested in it in 2017. This is when I first started investing in shares as well. Thankfully, I didn't put all of my money into cryptocurrency. It still had a bit of a balance. But I still did invest more than I would have liked to because I lost quite a bit of money from it. Basically what happened was one of my friends was investing in it. He was just telling me about his crazy returns. I was getting super excited. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're making so much money from this. And then I started investing myself. I had no idea what I was doing. I thought I knew, but I didn't. And basically, yeah, I just kept on investing. I think I invested about $4,000 in total. Cryptocurrencies really hit their peak at the end of, I think it was 2018. They really hit this like massive peak. And then within a couple of weeks, they just like fell off a cliff and really dropped. And I lost like pretty much all the money that I invested into it. And yeah, it was so sad because at some point in time, my $4,000 was worth $20,000 and I was just so happy. I was like, oh, it's just going to keep going up like this forever. And, you know, it's only been a few months. Like, can you imagine if I just left it in there for 10 years, like it's going to be worth, I'm going to be like rich. And yeah, it just didn't happen. So I think people need to be really careful when it comes to cryptocurrencies and also shares. Like there was so much hype at the time. Everybody was talking about cryptocurrency. Everyone was talking about like buying different coins or whatever. And so many Facebook groups and Reddit groups, people just buying stuff on the hype. And I think that's the thing that I've learned, like don't get caught up in the hype. Do your own research, make sure you know what you're investing in, and also don't invest too much money into things that are a bit speculative and risky. Like I still invest money into, I guess, stocks that are quite new, like that I think are really cool businesses, but I'm not going to put like 90% of my portfolio in there. I only put like a tiny bit, like 5 or 10%. So yeah, big takeaway there.
Yeah, for sure. That diversification piece is so critical, like just to break in, segment up, and one thing I always say is like, because I get a lot of like family members and close friends ask me like, oh, what do you think about investing in Virgin at the moment? And I'm like, number one, I don't know anything about stocks. Like I'm a property guy. That's all I talk about. Number two, I go, okay, if you're happy to invest $1,000 into Virgin, you've got to be happy that you're going to lose $1,000 in Virgin. If you're happy to lose $1,000 in Virgin, then go for it. Like that's fine. Just understand the consequences that it could go up or it could go down. Like that's, the main thing. Like don't ask me for advice here, which is pretty funny. But essentially, I think you're spot on. Like do your own research. I think everyone got hit with the Bitcoin in 2017.
Yes.
I certainly did too.
Did you? How much did you invest? Like,
I was the same. I was $4,000. I'm a data scientist by trade, so I do a lot of like algorithms and data analysis and all that sort of stuff. So some guys that I was close with at the time, I still am close with, but we were working on this sort of algorithm trading bot. So we're connected to all of these market exchanges, and we were algorithmically changing. And at the time, we were kind of like, we've written the best script there is, because the market was continuously going up. So we just thought we were being very successful, but essentially it was just their prices were going up anyway. So,
you could invest in any cryptocurrency back then and it would still like triple, quadruple in value.
Yeah. So I think like we're all in the same mindset, like, oh, it's just going to keep going up. We're doing so well, blah, 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 blah. So I think I got in a little bit earlier. I think I got in at like 2016 or something. So we did make, and that's the problem is the early success. And you think, this is going to continue to do so well. And then that early success, I was the same. My dad, like I was telling my dad about it. He lives over in New Zealand and we went to visit him and he was the same. He was like, I'll give you money to put in and rah, rah, rah. And it was the top of the market. And like, it's so hard because everyone got stung at that point in time. So I think you're spot on. Diversify and do your own research. There's nothing much you can take away from that, I don't think. What about resources? Like, are you a book person? Are you a podcast person? Where do you like to educate yourself? And is there anything that you'd recommend listeners to help them educate themselves?
I think definitely your podcast for sure, because it's a really great podcast. So
you don't have to say that.
You guys are like listening to it. I think, definitely books. I'm not really a fan of like reading physical books. I prefer audio books. So I get a lot of my like insights from there. And I also love watching YouTube videos. Obviously being a YouTuber, I kind of see it as like work now. I'm like, I'm watching this video, but it's actually like, it's part of my job. So I do this. But there's so many cool insights. Like I just love, it's honestly really cool. Like the amount of information that we have at our fingertips now. You can essentially like get so much knowledge and information from people all over the world and their own life experiences. So there's just such a wealth of knowledge and it's all free, which is even better, I think some really good books that I read, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I think it's one of everyone's like first money books, but that was a really great one. Barefoot Investor, again, same, like a staple, great money book. And I also really like Invested. So if you have any investors or people looking to invest in shares, that's a really great book that I really like. And Rule Number 1 is also a really good investing book.
Nice. I haven't read those last two, so I might pick them up and give them a read. Keen to, and that's why I love asking this question, because I get so many other resources that I didn't know about beforehand. And as you say, there's so many online things. Like there's this, I can't remember what it's called, but it's like this app, and it recites, a whole book in like 20 minutes or something like that. And like it just gets all the best pieces.
Oh, yes, I've seen this one. Yeah. What's it called? Read It For Me, I think.
Something like that. I don't know, but like I think that's so like it's so helpful. Like if you can't, because I'm like always, my mind's always going, and so I sometimes find it hard to just sit down and read a book. But to be able to get like bite-sized chunks all the time of like, and just the critical stuff is so cool. And I think there's so many different ways to get stuff and for free, as you say. And I think you've touched on it beforehand about helping people and doing what you love. But what inspires you to do all of this? Like, what motivates you? What gets you up in the morning?
That's a good question. I think, yeah, that's a really good question. What motivates me? I think it is like meeting like-minded people and helping people on their journey. That's the reason why I started. That's what I love about it so much, because I just honestly, I've never been so happy working on something in my life and being able to provide like free information to people, to give people hope, like just seeing the little like messages from people here and there saying like, oh, I watched this video, it's helped me so much, thank you so much. It makes me so happy to see that. And that's the reason why I do everything. It just makes it so worth it. And it makes it feel so rewarding in the end. I eventually do want to be able to have passive income streams and sources so that I can, I guess, yeah, like work on things that are really life-changing, things that really will make the world a better place. Because I think we have so much power, like time is power, and we're both young people. We really have our whole lives ahead of us. And if we can do, I guess, a bit of work now to set ourselves up so that we can be in a position where we can influence change and really influence the world for the better, it's so powerful. And I think at the end of the day, like, although, you know, people don't like to say it, but money it is important, it is power, and it is influence. But if you can have people that, I guess, are in it for the right reasons and do have genuinely good intentions, like we can make this world amazing, you know, like we can solve so many problems. So yeah, that's my goal, and that's why I do it.
That's so cool. That's honestly awesome. You've got some really great intentions there. You're looking out for people. You're trying to help other people. You're trying to motivate other people to set themselves up and do it for themselves. And I think, you know, I'm the same. Like, yeah, every time I get one person reach out, like some days I won't, like a YouTube video won't do that well or whatever, and just one person will reach out and say, hey, I got so much out of that. And that for me is all that matters. Like if I can help one person, like I don't care about anything else. Like that it's such a good feeling, and to help people move forward and educate themselves is probably one of the best things that I could do. And I recommend other people do it as well. And just finally, is there any other sort of final advice that you would give our generation to get started?
Honestly, whatever your passion is, whatever that thing in the back of your mind that you've always been wanting to try, and something that you've always been wanting to do, like maybe it's a side hustle, maybe it's a podcast, maybe it's a YouTube channel, maybe it's a business, I don't know, something, just do it, you know, like we're young, we have time. It doesn't matter if you get it wrong, and it doesn't matter if it fails, like at least you tried. And I think that that's one of the things that I know it really scared me for a while, starting a YouTube channel. I wanted to do it for ages, but I was so scared about what people would think, if I would fail, if I'd embarrass myself. But honestly, it's all part of the journey. I don't want to be old one day and look back at my life and think, why didn't I just take that risk, or why didn't I just put myself out there, you know? So I think life is worth it to do the things that you want, to take chances and, you know, really try and like pursue your dreams. That's the one thing that I think is takeaway.
Awesome. I absolutely love it. Well, you've been a killer today. You've given us some really great insights, and I really appreciate your time. Thank you for coming on.
Oh, you're so welcome. It's been so good to chat and meet people like you. Honestly, I've had the best time chatting to you. We both have very similar mindsets and similar goals, so cool to hear from you.
I really appreciate Queenie coming on and sharing her story. She's got some incredible insights, and it's so inspirational to see her success come from a passion of helping others. I'm always looking for more guests to come onto the show. If you're under 30 and have one or more investment properties, whether it's good, bad or ugly, I would love to talk to you about it. Even if you're interested into getting into the property sector, let's have a chat. The main focus is to help other soon-to-be young investors with tips and tricks along the journey, learn from the mistakes that we have made, and ignite the fire to set themselves up financially for the rest of their lives. If you're interested in sharing a story, you can go to jordandeong.com/podcast, where there's a podcast inquiry button at the top that will guide you through the next steps. If you want to see what else I'm up to, you can go to YouTube and type in Jordan De Jong, where you'll find the Smashed Avo Property podcast being hosted on YouTube and plenty of other content that I'm putting out consistently. If you're keen for more content like this, make sure you subscribe and please leave us a review with any feedback for future podcasts. And until next time, happy house hunting.